Namaste. Venus is very significant in our life. All the luxuries, all the comforts, all the conveniences comes by the blessing of Venus. Whenever a planet is retrograde, it slows down. So when it slows down, it gains more strength. So retrograde Venus definitely brings a lot of comforts, luxuries, and even wealth and possessions in life. However, because it has slowed down, because it is in retrogression state, the person faces certain issues in the matters of relationship, in the matters of love. So retrograde Venus is positive as far as wealth, possessions, money is concerned. However, when it comes to love, then love is absent. The person longs for love, and love seems to dodge this person having retrograde Venus. In the Kala Purush Kundali, 2nd house and 7th house signify Venus, Taurus and Libra. Possessions, wealth, values, family, and then marriage, union, partnerships. All of this comes in the domain of Venus. So when Venus is retrograde, it may happen that you may face challenges in these areas. However, retrograde Venus for sure bless you with good amount of wealth, luxuries and comforts of life. I have shared more about retrograde Venus in all 12 houses in this podcast. So let's begin. The very basics of Kundali is based on 4 angles that form the 4 pillars of human existence. Dharma Trikon, angle of righteousness. Artha Trikon, angle of economics. Kama Trikon, angle of sexuality. And Moksha Trikon, angle of liberation. Dharma Trikon contains the sign of Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Artha Trikona contains the sign of Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn. Kama Trikona contains the sign of Gemini, Libra and Aquarius. Moksha Trikona contains the sign of Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. Venus is the juice of life. When Venus is in its normal state, the juice of life is flowing smoothly. However, when Venus is retrograde, the juice of life is stuck and unable to flow, to move on, to progress. Life is juicy when love is present in your life, and life becomes dry, arid land when love is absent in your life, or when you are unable to experience the feeling of love in your marriage. And so when Venus is retrograde, the very first outcome is that the native struggles in the matters of love. Love continues to dodge him. He may enjoy a lot of sexual pleasures, but love is missing. Sex happens, but there is no love. It is necessary to note that retrograde Venus will not deny you the pleasures of life. You may earn well, you may drive a luxury car, however, you continue to struggle when it comes to finding the love of your life. And even if you find the love of your life, still this love affair brings more miseries in your life than otherwise. Basically, it is like a curse that you will never find love in life, and even if you find love, you will never find happiness in your relationship. When fifth house lord and fifth house is afflicted by Rahu, then retrograde Venus will lead to many relationships and many breakups. In such a scenario, the native literally suffers a lot when it comes to the matters of love, matters of heart, and relationships. However, sex is not denied. You can have as much sex as you want. You will also get many opportunities to enjoy sex. However, don't expect love, because retrograde Venus never let you experience love in life. When you are born in Taurus or Libra moon sign, then this retrograde Venus will definitely create more issues or tragedies in your love affairs or in marriage as such. I feel sorry for natives born with retrograde Venus, because they seek love but nobody loves them. No man or no woman truly love them. They only use them, but they never love them. I have heard that there was a very great painter. His name was Vincent van Gogh. He became very famous after he died. Until he was alive, he was not known much, and he was a great genius painter. But nobody loved him. No woman had ever fallen in love with him. He was ugly. He was not a handsome man. His whole life, Van Gogh was just giving his paintings to friends, to the hotel where he used to eat 4 days a week. He would present a painting. He also used to offer his beautiful painting to a prostitute who had once said to him that he is not a handsome man. However, one day, the same prostitute, out of compassion, and sometimes prostitutes have more compassion than your so-called ladies. They understand men more. So just out of compassion, she said, "I like you very much." He had never heard this. Love was a faraway thing. Even liking? He said, "Really? Really? You like me? What do you like in me?" Now the woman was at a loss. What to say? So she said, "I like your ears. Your ears are beautiful." And you will be surprised that Van Gogh went home, cut off his ears with a razor, packed them beautifully, went to the prostitute and gave his ears to her, and blood was flowing. She said, "What have you done?" He said, "Nobody ever liked anything in me, and I am a poor man. How can I thank you? You liked my ears, I have presented them to you. If you had liked my eyes, I would have presented my eyes to you. If you had liked me, I would have died for you." The prostitute could not believe it. But for the first time, Van Gogh was happy, smiling. Somebody had liked at least a part of him. This is the state of retrograde Venus natives, that they struggle to find love, to experience the feeling that someone likes them, someone loves them. It seems as if the whole world is a dry, arid land, and there is no love, but only sex, only pleasures, and only luxuries in life, but no love. Native remains emotionally disturbed, not able to express emotions, may suddenly burst out in tears. Retrograde Venus can impact the sexuality of the native. If the horoscope has some difficult placements, then this retrograde Venus can lead to homosexuality. Many men and women having retrograde Venus along with very odd placements of other planets are found to have more interest in same sex or homosexuality. However, it is important to note that retrograde Venus not always leads to homosexuality. If other aspects in the chart are positive, if Moon, Mercury, Jupiter and the 7th house and 7th house Lord is in normal state, then the native will have normal attraction towards the opposite sex and will not become a gay. In certain cases, when the chart is poor in quality, then attraction towards prostitutes, enjoying sex outside marriage, basically adultery is seen when Venus is retrograde. I will now share the outcome of retrograde Venus in all 12 houses. Retrograde Venus in first house. Retrograde Venus in first house gives a pleasing personality. The person is appealing to others. A woman with this placement generally is found attractive and in some cases extremely beautiful. A man with this placement has a very attractive face that attracts many women towards him. Generally, this placement gives long hair to women. In some cases, curly hairs is also seen. A woman with a curly hair or a man with a curly hair is always attractive. There is something special about the hair when the hair is curly. This is a good placement for Venus, though often the person may indulge in multiple love affairs. This placement somehow makes the partner insecure because the native is so charming and attractive that the partner thinks that maybe the native may slip out of his or her hands and may indulge in extramarital affairs. This is an excellent placement for those who want to become model or those who want to work in fashion industry. Overall, this placement brings a certain spice to the native's life. The natives seem to be a very interesting character. Overall, a good placement that provides good looks and a good personality, but somehow the native receives less credit. The native feels that he or she deserves more, but is devoid of full credit. Retrograde Venus in second house. This placement provides a mesmerizing voice. This placement is excellent for those who want to become professional cooks. In fact, a woman with this placement loves to cook various delicacies. Even men with this placement take great interest in cooking as well as trying out new recipes. This is a very luxurious placement for Venus. Person receives money and is blessed by goddess Lakshmi. Generally, native talks very sweetly, and so this becomes a great asset for marketing professionals and sales executives, as well as it is also a good placement for natives in news media industry. This is a good placement for those who want to make a career in banking or in finance industry. This is also good for aspiring singers as well as those who want to become professional cooks. The downside of this placement is that although money comes, still the native is unable to save money. Indulgence in pleasure seeking activities is one of the reasons that prevents the native from having a good bank balance. Retrograde Venus in third house. Retrograde Venus in third house is excellent for artists. In fact, good writers, good artists, good painters are born with this placement. These natives has the potential to perform well on the stage. They are good communicators. These are very creative people, and retrograde Venus does bring some unique talent that eventually brings much fame and wealth in native's life. However, some issues with siblings or emotional problems is seen with this placement. The native is unable to control his or her emotions. Although they are good in expressing themselves, but when it comes to emotional situations, they just seem to get lost and find difficulties in expressing their emotion to the fullest. Depending on the placement of Mercury, either the native becomes an emotional intelligent person or an emotional fool. These natives love to travel and they enjoy much during their short travels. This is overall a good placement, and the native is blessed with great communication skills. Retrograde Venus in fourth house. Blessed with happiness, native with retrograde Venus in fourth house are very romantic by nature. To them, life is boring without the touch of romance. They love to spend most of their time in the comforts of their home. They are daydreamers. Many women with this placement take great efforts in designing the interiors of their house. Many even become good interior designers. These natives are very emotional by nature, and since they have been brought up with much care and love, they also become very lovable by nature. These men and women are not risk takers. They like to live in their own comfort zones. They like to remain connected with their near and dear ones. These are family oriented people and generally would not like to live away from their home. They simply love their home. These are the natives who make a perfect home. Generally, they enjoy the luxury of good bikes and good cars. Overall, this is a very comfortable placement, and natives generally spend their whole life comfortably, though emotionally they remain volatile since they face many issues in their relationships and contacts. Retrograde Venus in fifth house. Retrograde Venus in fifth house gives a natural inclination towards creative art. Person is well versed in religious scriptures. Many pundits and scholars are born with this placement. This is a highly romantic placement. Dancing, singing, reading poetry. The person loves to do all kind of creative arts. This is also a good placement for those aspiring to become actor or actresses. This placement is good for stage performance. This is also an excellent placement for making a career in politics. Many great leaders have had this placement and they have been good political leaders. This placement also makes one a good diplomat. Overall, this is excellent placement for studies and artwork. Retrograde Venus in 6th house. Retrograde Venus in 6th house generally gives good servants, and also if the native is in service sector, then generally does well in his or her job. Overall, this placement brings many temptations at the job place. The native gets into the habit of mixing pleasure with work, and so love affairs at workplace or love affair with a woman working under the native is seen. If horoscope is of good quality, then the native will not get entangled in love affairs at workplace. Else, if the horoscope is of poor quality, then the native may get carried away and indulge in sexual pleasures at workplace, leading to a bad name and loss of prestige in society. Once a wise man had said, "When you are in power, never associate yourself with any woman, because then you will be in trouble, deep trouble." Retrograde Venus in the 6th house is not a good placement, since the native's energy is drained in dealing with many issues at workplace. It is like when you are ought to enjoy the beauty of Rome, you are dealing with the issues in Afghanistan. So overall, this is not a great placement for romance or a happy married life. However, if the native takes a back seat and follows the advice of his or her marriage partner, then the marriage or relationship can work out. Else, struggle in marriage or relationship is a trend of this placement. Retrograde Venus in 7th house. Retrograde Venus in 7th house is a very sensitive placement when it comes to marriage or sexual union. The native either gets abundance of sexual pleasures and yet love is absent in his life, or the native is able to experience true love but is unable to experience a good sexual life. This way or that way, the natives seem to have at least one missing element in his or her life. Either sex is absent or love is absent, and the native continues to fill up the absent element in his or her life, but never succeeds. Venus in 7th house is anyhow a bad placement, and on top of that, retrograde Venus makes matters more worse than otherwise. Much of the native's energy goes in addressing the many emotional issues of marriage or relationships. If you have a daughter or a son with this placement, then you should provide support to your child, since this placement is indeed a very challenging placement for Venus. And if Mercury is also retrograde, then it can make the matters of marriage or relationship more worse than otherwise. Ideally, this is not a good placement for partnerships or business as such. If the horoscope is poor in quality, then the native may face certain issues while doing sex, or the native can have an inclination towards homosexuality. Retrograde Venus in 8th house. Retrograde Venus in 8th house can lead to many sexual problems, as well as the native may have certain unique ideas about sexuality. This is again a very challenging placement for retrograde Venus. If the horoscope is of poor quality, then the person may have experienced sexual exploitation during his or her childhood days. This placement in a man's chart can lead him towards prostitutes, or if the placement is in a woman's chart, then she may have to deal with men who raise serious questions on her character. A young woman with this placement should always stay cautious when it comes to dealing with men, because this placement can push you towards sexual harassment or sexual exploitation. For those men and women who indulge in tantric activities, occult practices, this is a good placement. They can attain progress on their occult path. Now, when the horoscope is of an evolved soul, then this placement can definitely help in progressing on the spiritual path. Remember, there is a difference between occult and spirituality. Occult has all sorts of magics and plays of the mind, whereas spirituality is free of the mind and so very pure, very harmless, and very satisfying in nature. Depending on the nature of the horoscope, the person either walks on the path of occult or he walks on the path of spirituality. However, for a material world, this placement remains a great challenge, especially in regards to sex, sexuality, relationships, and the danger of being sexually exploited by others. Retrograde Venus in 9th house. Retrograde Venus in 9th house is a very auspicious placement. Men and women with this placement are highly religious or spiritual by nature, but generally they all take a lot of interest in studying the higher philosophy of life. This is an excellent placement for those who take interest in outdoor sports. It is also good for long travels. Worshipping goddess Durga is beneficial for native with this placement. Native likes to perform rituals and pujas and generally is a follower of a certain spiritual sect or guru. These people have strong belief in astrology. People with this placement like to have a nice library in their home, or they love to visit libraries. In short, they love to read books that add value to their life. Overall, this is a very positive placement for retrograde Venus. Person succeeds in life, achieves his goal, but with some delays and frustrations. Retrograde Venus in 10th house. Retrograde Venus in 10th house is excellent placement for making a career in the field of arts and communication. This placement gives a very beautiful face to the native. If the native is a woman, she looks attractive and appealing. And if the native is a man, then he attracts many women in his life. This is a very good placement for doing business in luxury goods as well as in pharmaceutical or construction industry. This is also a good placement for those who aspire to become managers. Many C-class board executives have this placement. In politics, this placement does wonders. The native enjoys many luxuries and a good status in the society. Retrograde Venus in 11th house. Retrograde Venus in 11th house is a highly rewarding placement. The native is blessed by goddess Lakshmi. And if the native is a Hindu, then he or she must worship goddess Lakshmi every day or every Friday without fail. A woman with this placement is a Lakshmi in itself, and a man with this placement is blessed by Lord Vishnu. If the horoscope is of good quality, then such a native becomes wealthy and enjoys many luxuries of life. Generally, natives with this placement receive much benefit from their friends. And if the horoscope is of high quality, then the native may have affluent, famous, and successful friends who may help the native to rise in life. Overall, this is a very positive placement for retrograde Venus. Retrograde Venus in 12th house. In an evolved person's horoscope, retrograde Venus in 12th house gives a strong inclination towards seeking spiritual bliss. But from materialistic world perspective, this placement provides many pleasures of bed, many secret love affairs, and many beautiful experiences of the foreign world. Depending on the type of horoscope, this placement fructifies. For a materialistic person, this placement provides good amount of pleasures from opposite sex, as well as also attracts much wealth and prosperity. While for a spiritualistic person, this placement enables the native to connect with the astral world and experience the divinity within. This is indeed a very sensitive placement for Venus. Either the person becomes a bhogi or a yogi. There is no middle ground. Either the person will indulge in too much of sex or will simply become a celibate, a sannyasi. Transformation happens, but late in life. But once transformation triggers, then the native never looks back. A bhogi becomes a yogi, and then there is no looking back. So overall, this is not a bad placement, though it is necessary that the native controls his or her vasanas, that is desires, and understand where to stop and when to stop. Else the addiction towards pleasures can cause much damage to the native's health and life in general. This placement also leads to many addictions, and so the native should bring more awareness to his being. A good guide or a good guru is necessary for natives having this placement. And if the horoscope is of good quality, then many of them also find their guru, though late in life. Overall, retrograde Venus by default brings great attraction towards pleasure seeking activities. It is a perfect sign of a real time bhogi. However, if the horoscope has a certain depth of awareness, then miracle can happen, transformation can happen, and a bhogi can transform into a yogi. Many such miracles have happened in the past. However, the horoscope should have a certain spiritual height to it, and then the change, the transformation can happen. Retrograde Venus is a story of a bhogi. Bhogi means one who is completely engrossed in enjoying the many pleasures of this material world, such as sex, alcohol, dancing, singing, accumulating, and basically living a complete materialistic life that knows nothing about spirituality as such. However, in a way, this is not bad, because many a times when you have reached to the very dead end of a road, there is no other way than to come back home. Similarly, when a person has attained all the pleasures of this human world, when he had all the experiences of sex, alcohol, power, money, properties, and when there is absolutely nothing more to experience, then such a person is in a more better position to turn inwards and embark on the greatest journey of life, the journey within. It is not necessary that every person on this planet should experience all the riches and pleasures of the world just to later realize that all these riches and pleasures don't serve the real purpose of life. Some are wise enough to self realize at a very early stage of their life, while some need to go through the whole circle of pleasures until they realize the truth. And the truth is simple: you never will attain peace and lasting happiness by becoming rich, else all the millionaires and billionaires would have attained lasting happiness and eternal peace. But the reality is in contrast to what a common man thinks. The reality is that the rich and famous are suffering more than those who are standing in the queue of becoming rich and famous. But to many, the world of pleasures is the world that they desire, and so they continue to stand in the queue of becoming rich and famous. And now I can understand that why God is so busy. Enough for now. Love to all my followers. Stay blessed and remember to meditate and chant every day. Jai Sri Ganesha. Jai Guru. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.